This isn't a confession. You can't prove a damn thing, so don't even try. I'll deny it to my grave. I'm on my 3rd drink for the evening anyways. You can't trust the word of a drunken man. That's when I start to feel anything these days, the 3rd drink. Sometimes it takes 4, but usually 3 will do. It's the same cycle every night for weeks now. I drink, then I start to feel, then the fear comes over me, then I drink some more until I pass out. Wake up, slog through the day, keep my head down, keep my chin up, don't draw anyone's attention, go home, repeat. One night a few weeks back there was a man at my door. I answered it, wondering what in the devil he was doing there at this time of night. I live at the end of my street and there's no one around for quite a ways. And even the churchgoers that comb the neighborhood rarely make it all the way to my house. "Help me," he gasped, his blood-flecked lips quivering in the rain. His forearm was badly broken, bits of bone sticking out through the skin. He was pale and drenched, the rain and blood dripping steadily from his haggard frame, pooling on my porch beneath him. "There's been an accident. I need help," he winced. "Can you help me?" I nodded dumbly, shocked at his state, then ran inside looking for my cell phone. But by the time I got back to the door, he was gone. The only sign of him a trail of splattered red, leading down my front steps and out into the yard. I stood there, shocked for a moment, and then I put the phone away, slammed the door, and locked it. I don't know why, I was just scared, frightened by the whole affair, and some part of me, some damn selfish part of me, kept saying it's okay. It's someone else's problem. He's gone. Forget about it. So I poured myself a drink to ease my nerves, and then another. A few drinks later, I had forgotten all about him, and a few drinks after that, I drank myself to sleep. I woke up with my head throbbing. I'm not a heavy drinker. Well, used to not be one anyways. I stepped outside and noticed that there was no blood on my porch, and breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe the rain washed it all away, I thought. Or maybe it hadn't happened at all. I went to work nursing my hangover, but I made it through the day, came home, and tried to relax. I'd slept poorly the night before, and my day took what energy I had. So I decided early in the evening to call it a night. I was just about to go to bed when there was another knock at the door. I froze looking over to it. My heart raced. I tried to laugh off my rising fear. It was just someone at the door, nothing to be afraid of. But as my hand reached for the knob, I heard his voice, the same quaking shudder of a voice from the night before. "Help! I need help!" I stood stone still as he pounded on the door. "God, it hurts," he shouted. "Please, why won't you help me?" I put my back to the door, bracing it, squeezing my eyes shut. This isn't real, I thought. It can't be. And after a few seconds, the knocking stopped and it was quiet. I flung open the door, but there was no one there, no trace of blood or sign of his presence. Unsettled, I shut the door, locked it, and reached for a bottle. And so it went for 4 more days, each night the same. The knocking, the horrible man at my door, the cries for help. And each night I secured the door and waited until it stopped, then drank myself into oblivion. By the 7th night I'd had enough. I made a stiff drink as soon as I got home, and then another and another after that one. I had thought of nothing but the events of the previous week that day, so naturally I was anticipating the knocking when it came again that night, confirming my paranoid fears. I was waiting for it. I threw open the door upon the first knock, and there he was, battered arm hanging limp at his side, pale face twisted into a grimace. But before he could say anything, I leveled my shotgun at his face and pulled the trigger. His head popped like a blister, and I fired a second time, blowing his arm clean off and leaving a hole in his torso. Covered in his wet viscera, I shut the door. I want to say I was in a trance, that I was on autopilot and out of my head, but that's not true. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was trying to make a point to myself. See, I'm a level-headed man. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural or anything like that. We live in a rational world, and I damn well wasn't going to sit back and let my head play tricks on me without fighting back. They say blood is hard to wash off, but it's not true. His blood washed right off of me. One shower later, I was good as new. So when I finished up cleaning up and calming down, I went back to the front door. I likewise expected there to be nothing there, as there had been no trace of him left from the previous nights. I couldn't believe it when I opened the door and his remains slumped inside like a sack full of meat. I reached down and poked the corpse. It was solid. The porch was covered in blood and gore. Once more I panicked, and this time I did go into a sort of trance. The hours passed in a blur, as I dragged the body around to the back of the house, dug out a shallow grave, cleaned off the porch as best I could, and took another shower. And then I made another drink. Tomorrow the knocking would come again, I was sure. I hadn't just killed a man and buried him in my backyard. When I got home the next evening, I sat and waited anxiously. At any moment the knocking would come. The man would again be at my door, waiting for me, asking for help. Maybe tonight I'd laugh and invite him in, ask him if he wanted a drink. I thought, sipping my own drink nervously. The minutes stretched out, and it felt like I'd waited an eternity when it finally came. The knocking. I breathed a sigh of relief as I rushed to the door. But it wasn't the man from the previous nights. It was the police. The car had gone off the road the night before. They wanted to know if I'd seen anyone. Maybe it was my drunken state that allowed me to lie so convincingly. But after telling them I knew nothing of it, they bid me a good evening and left. My pulse pounded in my head. This couldn't be happening, I thought. It wasn't real. The thoughts piled on one by one, and all I could do to quell them was to keep drinking until I lost consciousness. I called in sick the next day. I checked my backyard, and sure enough, the grave I'd dug was still there. Still fresh. I dug him up and burned the body until it was ash. When I was done, I went back inside the house and numbly sat down. And since then, I can't feel anything. Not until I drink. Usually 3, sometimes 4. And it's only then that I start to feel it. The fear. See, I'm not afraid of ghosts. I don't believe in them. I've never believed in them. Probably in part because I was raised by my heavily superstitious mother. She made herself a living as a psychic, telling fortunes. She claimed that she had the sight, that she could see person's fate before it happened. And she had a steady stream of gullible clients that kept a roof over our heads and food on our table. So it didn't make a big deal out of it. But like any other kid, I rebelled against her and her beliefs. And when I left home, I found plenty of support for that rebellion. Psychics aren't real, right? No one can see the future, right? Because now I'm afraid my mother wasn't faking it. That she could really see the fate of all those people who came to her. And I'm afraid. I'm so terribly damn afraid that now I can see it too.
Many years ago in Borneo, there was an Englishman named Clifford Macy, who was young, handsome, and very vain. He fancied himself as God's gift to women and often boasted about his success. Macy was part owner of a tobacco plantation, and his friend and business partner was another Englishman by the name of Leopold Warwick. Despite being old and fat, Warwick had a wife who was very young and very beautiful, and she was the envy of every man who set eyes on her. The three of them lived together in a big house on the plantation. Macy slept in the first bedroom while Warwick and his wife slept in the second. It was rainy season and there was precious little to do. Macy was bored and he could find nothing that would keep him entertained. As time went on, he developed a passion for Warwick's wife and began to wish that he could have her for himself. He tried flirting with her, but she wouldn't have anything to do with him. One evening, when her husband was away, Macy made a pass at her, but she slapped his face. However, Macy was the kind of man who didn't take no for an answer. Every time she rebuffed him, he became more and more obsessed with her until he was determined to have her at any cost. Although his heart was burning with a white-hot passion, Macy had a devilish and cunning mind. He soon came up with a way to get Warwick out of the picture. In Borneo, there is a type of earwig that lives on waxy secretions. It had been a special liking for the human's ear. It is so small and light that it could be crawling on your face and you'd barely even feel it. If it gets into a man's ear, it creeps down the canal, unable to turn around, feeding as it goes and causing weeks of hellish torment until, well, I'm sure you can use your imagination. Macy paid two men a large sum of money and instructed them to creep into Warwick's bedroom in the middle of the night and place an earwig on his pillow. He went to sleep that night with a smile on his face and dreamed about the horrible fate that was about to befall his friend. The next morning, when Macy came down to breakfast, Warwick seemed bright and cheerful. He watched the old man closely, looking for any signs of discomfort. Just then, Macy felt a strange tickling sensation in his own ear. When he poked his finger into his ear, he discovered that he was bleeding. Jumping up from the table with a look of horror on his face, he shrieked, "The damn thing is in my ear!" It appeared that the men he paid had made a terrible mistake, and during the night, they had gone into the wrong room and placed the earwig in the wrong man's ear. That was the beginning of weeks of an unimaginable pain and agony. There was nothing the doctor could do for him. He lay in his room, tied to the bed with his wrist lashed to the headboard to prevent him from tearing his ears off. Day and night he withered and screamed as the earwig crept and crawled and twisted through his head, slowly driving him insane. Occasionally, when the earwig was resting, Macy would get a break from his torment, but when it woke up, he would scream and scream and scream some more. The pain was so unbearable that being flayed alive, burned at the stake, put on the rack, or even hanged by the neck would have been an act of mercy. Every time the doctor came to see him, Macy begged him to put him out of his misery. Then something very unexpected happened. Miraculously, the earwig crawled out of his other ear. Macy had come close to the brink of death, but he had survived the torment. When he was well enough to talk, the doctor came in to see him. "I suppose they're going to call the police and have me arrested now," said Macy. "No," said the doctor, "they're not calling the police." "Why not?" Macy demanded. "I suppose they're trying to avoid a scandal?" "No, they're trying to take pity on you. They know about your condition." "What do you mean?" "You see, the earwig was female," said the doctor, "and it laid eggs." I've never really believed in the supernatural, but lately something very strange has been happening to me. It all started a few weeks ago. I was standing in line at the supermarket and I noticed that the woman on the checkout was staring at me. Her lips were twisted into an eerie smile. I tried to ignore her and paid for my groceries, but that's when it happened. As I was leaving, she said, "Have a nice day." For a moment, I stood there in complete shock. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The second time I noticed it, I was walking down the street. There was a man coming towards me. He was staring directly at me and he was grinning from ear to ear. It was that same eerie smile. As he passed me, he said, "Good morning." I stopped in my tracks and stood there trembling, unable to believe what was going on. Since then, other people have spoken to me. I'm beginning to think I'm losing my mind. I even went to the doctor. He told me it wasn't possible. He said it couldn't happen, but yet I know it is happening. You may be wondering why I'm so frightened. You may think I'm overreacting, but here's the problem. I shouldn't be able to hear anything at all. You see, ever since I was born, I've been completely deaf.
There it goes again. Something definitely moved this time. It was very brief. But out of the corner of your eye, you saw something. But wait. All the doors are locked, no pets, and your parents won't get home until around 10. So there's no way something moved. It's just your imagination getting the best of you. Sitting alone in your room, the only light emitting from the monitor of your computer. You stare into the darkness for several minutes, just to be sure. Now you feel silly. What were you thinking? Of course there's nothing there. What are you, 6? Go back to what you were doing. 15 minutes later, as you prepare to go to bed, you're in the bathroom. The shower curtain shifts. Wait, no. Stop spooking yourself. It's just an overactive imagination filling your head with what isn't really there. You gaze into the mirror at yourself. You say it to yourself, slowly and clearly. Imagination. With a sigh, you turn the lights off and head towards your room. Laying in bed, you stare at your ceiling, dark and foreboding. Only the motion of a small fan disturbing the calmness of the night. A shadow from the light in the hall shifts. No, stop it. It's your imagination, just that. Go to sleep, you fool. But then, just when you're about to drift off to sleep, at that phase no one remembers when they wake, you sense something in the darkness. It's your imagination leering down at you with a jagged, macabre smile. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you'd like to, you can follow me at Twitter. The handle is @FuzzyPantaloons, and I'll see you all next time.